Hi, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and today I'm here with Charlie Barnett, and you may know him from his role as Peter Mills in Chicago Fire and, of course, in You. Today we're here to talk about the NBC TV series that's about to come out called Ordinary Joe, and he stars as Eric Payne. I'm saying a lot, right? You've done a lot.
Thank you. I mean, hey, thank you, thank the world. I don't know. Thank you for having me, Koku.
No, thank you for speaking with me, Charlie. I really, truly appreciate it. So I have a ton of questions to ask you, but I know we've only got a little bit of time, so I'll try to be smart about how I do this. So the first thing I want to ask you is that you did grow up in Florida, and I know this comes up a lot, but just I really want to talk about you growing up on a boat. What was that like?
It's funny to me. It's like it's not that. Well, maybe now it's uncommon, but for me at the time it wasn't that uncommon. We had like friends that even lived next, the water down. It wasn't like a block away. It would be like a swim. But my dad's a boat builder. My sister was an incredible sailor growing up. My mom is less the sail person. She would get seasick a lot, but she lived on that boat with us. I loved it. And up until about, 10 or 13, I think it's a great thing. After that, don't be living on no boats with your family because it's not fun.
No, right? I can imagine. And I mean, like, so I know you had your friends that lived on boats as well, but what was it like having friends come over? It's like, you guys live on a boat. Was that weird at any point?
Fair, we moved onto a house when we were like 7, and then we moved back onto a boat for a little bit. And we lived in a marina at that point too. We weren't like out in the water. The friends that I had coming over to as a young age, son, they loved it. They loved it, and we were tiny enough to fit on the boat and do whatever we want. So, just swimming in the ocean, climbing back on, it was some of the best fun that I've ever had in my life.
Oh, no, I can imagine. And then life takes you then from, of course, from Florida to, you went to Juilliard, which is a significant, just huge, huge deal. So what was that like going to that school and getting that level of education?
It was hard. It was hard and it was amazing all the same. I definitely learned the existence of duality and like living in both of those moments. I mean, they tried to kick me out, I will say openly, for good reasons. I was not in the mental state that I should be in. But it's because of the challenges that kind of arise. It's a system that is built to break you down and build you up. And I'm hoping, with it that some attention is starting to go to those schools, those programs, how difficult they are on students mentally. We luckily, our program had a balance between undergrads and graduates. And I had a lot of elderly, not trying to age them, but older classmates and friends who were unbelievably supportive and understanding and helpful in just kind of finding your way through something so new as just being alone in a different city, and when you're leaving high school and going into college. Mm-hmm. But I will say it's the best thing that ever happened to me as well.
Yeah, really?
Your choices, bad or good, or ending up in a place that sometimes maybe doesn't feel right, can actually give you some of the best outcomes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's interesting that you say that, because I do want to sort of get right into the Ordinary Joe. The premise is really about these sort of alternate timelines, right? And you play Joe's best friend. And so with you, what I appreciate about you is that you're very honest about your journey and some of the things that you've gone through in your life. Do you ever think about an alternate timeline and just what could have happened or transpired had you gone another direction? And what do you think that you'd want to do if not acting?
It's so funny too. They keep bringing up all these like technical issues because we're like, now we're getting to science fiction world, and they're like, it's not timelines necessarily. It's actually like existences, but it's the terminology of all this stuff. I find it so fascinating. But I think about it often. I just to drop another personal one, I was adopted. I was adopted at 4 hours old. And I was adopted into a white family as well. So it's like that whole existence that I've had has always, for my parents, for myself, my parents are amazing enough to have connected me with my birth family as well. So I know a lot of the root, at least from my mother's line. It's like inevitably you will think about the what ifs in that kind of situation. I think every adopted kid I know thinks about that at some point. And I think it's healthy too, for all of us to ask those questions. It's whether or not you get lost and trapped into it. And I never have. My parents are my parents and I love them to death. And I would fall on the sword for for either of them. But that's like a huge what if for me. I think it's, yeah. I could go down the list of like parties I shouldn't have gone to or where I ended up. You know what? Because what it's made me what I am. I will go in there though. There is always in life, there are challenges that you know, because I am queer, because I am Black, because that arise that are going to be limiting and unfair and unjust. And sometimes, you know, God willing, you don't end up dead or in a place of ooh, I'm getting dark, but I mean, but really in a place where you can't rise above. We all have that opportunity, but it really makes you start to understand humanity. And I hope, and from watching the show, if we go deeper and deeper, relate to people in a different way, because you can see, hey, that pathway I could have been down. I could have been there. Exactly.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're just so self-aware. And again, it's just, I really appreciate that. And I think that obviously with you being so transparent, you know, with that, there comes responsibility. Representation is actually very important. We know that. But is there a weight to that that sometimes can feel uncomfortable?
Oh, for me, it's like, I'll be upfront, it's buckling at times. Specifically because I when I was working on a show called Tales of the City a while ago, I kept being posed with the question of, hey, you're representing Black queer people now. How does that feel? And I had to pause every single time and remind people that I was like, I am not the limit of representation. If you're taking me at its face value, if this is all that you see, there's so many problems with that to begin with. I'm a part of it, and I'm thankful to be a part of that community, but it is not a reflection on all of it. And you should be expanding yourself to see that difference. It's scary. It's scary from that kind of standpoint, but it's also, gosh, it's enriching, and it's an opportunity that not many people have. And I know myself, there's a belief that I would rather uplift the people around me who I know are really good at it and who have something good to say. But I'm starting to figure out how I can utilize my own voice. But it's a balancing act that I want to take seriously and patiently, but in a lot of time. So get in it.
Oh, that's great. And I wanted to ask you something, because you said something in another interview. So you know, your parents, you were raised, your parents are white. And I saw in an interview that you said when you were acting in New York, that sometimes they were telling you that you didn't represent Black enough. So, I mean, just even the duality, like you said, just being raised in a white family, knowing that you're Black, your parents allowing you to know who you are, then being in a situation where you're not.
Let me say, me and my sister, they would be bringing us into like African American heritage museums at like 4 and 5 years old. We'd be like, I don't know, what are we doing here? What you doing? Like, I mean, we were like, they bring us to the barbershop, like everything that they could do to be like, you need to understand.
That's so beautiful about them, because a lot of times when people say, I don't see color, that's actually more damaging. And people don't realize that. People really need to know who they are.
Let alone, like, I mean, that I don't even want to get down into that root of that.
Right.
Let alone, if you don't see color, whatever, fine. You know that there's an existence where the world and so many people do around you. So
yeah,
whatever.
So let's make it real light really quick. So we have something in common. We have both lived in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago.
Oh.
What is your favorite city of all those places, if you can pick one?
Shame of it all, but the weather messes with my mind, but Chicago, 100%.
Is that right?
Yeah, 100%.
I know so many people that are going to be so excited to hear that you said.
Look, if you haven't had the opportunity, if you haven't had a summer in Chicago, everyone needs to experience that. It's one of the best places to be. But I mean, I want to know yours, actually.
Okay, so we don't have the same answer. my answer is, I feel much more comfortable and at home in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like my town.
Yeah. I love it. Every time I'm there, I love it because I get to stay for a couple months and I'm working and I'm getting paid and I get to leave. I got so frustrated at a certain point. I was working, last time I was living in New York, I was working 4 jobs. I was filming, I was on Law and Order at the time. I just booked Men in Black 3. And so I was filming like 2 things and working 4 waiting jobs, and I could not pay rent. And I was done. I was talking to friends in Florida buying homes, you know what I mean, for 50 cents and junk.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing about New York. You realize that like your life almost is slowed
Yeah.
compared to other people. People are like, oh, they're like in their McMansions in Atlanta or something. And we're
But it's
like,
for and honestly, living in sometimes those little box squares, they make you such a different and better person. I will not lie. I bow down to New York too. Going through these last 2 years, like for anyone in this whole country, I know we all have suffered in the world, but like I have been thinking about my New York friends a lot. So props, props, props.
it is
Many.
very, very I Am Legend. It's strange. It's not the same New York that you know. It's very weird to live in New York right now.
I was there filming the second season of Russian Doll about a couple months ago, and this is right when the lifts started coming. So it was still really, really quiet, but we were staying on the Lower East Side. First and foremost, it was the quietest I've ever been in the Lower East Side. I was just like,
Hmm.
I mean, I kind of enjoyed it. I was like, I'm sorry for the trauma, but I was like, this is nice that there's no one walking around and it's just beautiful out. As everything started lifting and starting to see the city come back to life, it was like, oh God, it's always better with sound.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And Charlie, I know you're like, this is a press day for Charlie, and I'm just taking up all his time. So like I said, I had to squeeze these questions in.
I'll sit here and I'll talk to you for all day. Like
No, you're definitely, this has been a very interesting conversation and one of my favorite for sure in this amount of time. And I loved it, and I love what you're doing. And I really appreciate, like I said, your transparency, your honesty. It's really, it's amazing. And I just want everybody to know, again, this is Charlie Barnett. He is the star of Ordinary Joe. You will see him on there as Eric Payne. It is on NBC, September 20th. My name is Coco with blackfilm.com. Thank you so much for speaking with me, and thank you for everything that you do.
thank you. Thank you for speaking with me. Thanks for having me.
Take care.